Have you ever had a decision in your life that you knew if you said something, it would change your life forever, and it took courage and guts to stick to that decision? And you knew also that if you didn't, you could sort of go along, but you wouldn't feel right about it in your heart, and you knew it wasn't the truth. Well, you're going to hear about Greg Dillon's decision in this next episode of Books and Brews, as we talk about the next segment of The Thin Blue Lie with Greg Dillon. In this interview, he's going to talk about his decision and then what happened to him afterwards, what happened to the guy that perpetrated the injustice afterwards, how he took a situation that was meant to punish him and he turned it in his favor. I'm Sue Waldron, and this is my cat Pumpkin. Enjoy this next interview with Greg Dillon. You found out there were 7 of your reports that were falsified. How did you feel about that?
It really rattled me. When you're in a situation like this, it's not even a fork in the road. It's a T intersection. You're either going to go along with it and tolerate it, which means you're taking a hard left, or you're going to challenge it, bring it to someone's attention, and you're taking a hard right. But those are 2 one-way streets. Once you go down that street, there is no U-turn to say, you know what, maybe this wasn't a good idea, I'm coming back. If you tolerate it, now you're a co-conspirator, or however you want to call it, you're an accomplice. If you go down the road where you're going to challenge it, there's no unringing the bell, so to speak. It's out there. And unfortunately, that's the situation that I found myself in. It troubled me terribly because I had obviously gone through all the same training as these other agents. I took the oath of office when I graduated, and it was impressed upon us at the academy, sort of like your word is your bond, that your credibility was of ultimate importance because people need to be able to have faith in an agent when they testify in court that what they're saying is absolutely true. And I was really shaken to my core because the lies on the affidavits that they were attributing to other people, it wasn't even that they owned it themselves and decided that they were going to say they had a informant or a source. They were going to put it on somebody else. You're a scapegoat because you don't even realize that this information is on you. Despite the fact that we had documentary proof that they had falsified the affidavit, he publicly cleared them in the newspapers. We were gagged both verbally and in writing under the threat of losing our jobs. Chief State's Attorney Bailey corroborated the fact that he didn't believe there was any wrongdoing or any criminal conduct, simply misunderstandings and miscommunications and typographical errors, which hurt us terribly because he knew us personally and he had to know that we would never make an accusation like that unless it was true. The OPR from the FBI came up from Washington, D.C., the Office of Professional Responsibility, which is the equivalent of the internal affairs of a police department, at the end of their investigation, essentially cleared all the agents of any wrongdoing based upon the fact that nobody was really punished or penalized for this, which was yet another layer of injustice. So it was misconduct on top of a cover-up. So there were layers of corruption there that were never addressed. The agent that was sort of the mastermind behind all of the falsified affidavits during the investigation was promoted to a supervisor's position. The irony was, I was a supervisor, and during the investigation, I was no longer a supervisor. The agent who was not a supervisor was promoted to supervisor. Because everyone knew this was going to change everything from that point forward. Nothing would be the same. Nobody was going to accept that having their names knowingly on falsified affidavits that had already been signed by a judge. So none of us were good with that. Later on, when I was forced to file a federal lawsuit, my 2 colleagues opted out because of the fear of losing their job. In their defense, both of them had children that had not yet started college, and they really needed that job if they were going to be good parents. I didn't have children, so I had like a little more latitude, I guess, or wiggle room to pursue it. And I was also the supervisor, and I felt I had the added responsibility of that. Well, my immediate supervisor was a chief inspector.
Okay.
And I brought it to his attention. It was analysis paralysis.
Sure.
He didn't really know what to do. Yeah. He said he was going to bring it to the attention of the boss, which was the Chief State's Attorney Bailey. 2 weeks went by, and we're working with the FBI, and I'm aware of the complaint that I've made, and I was very troubled by the circumstances. So I opted to initiate a meeting with Mr. Bailey by writing him a memo and saying, this is what I've discovered, and what do you expect us to do? So he had us removed from the task force, which was fine, because we continued to do our work, and we were quite successful. Unfortunately, I didn't realize at that time that he was simultaneously trying to be hired by the Department of Justice in Washington, D.C., the Attorney General's office. He was vying for a position to run the criminal division. He knew that the FBI would have to do his background investigation. He knew that the U.S. Attorney's office would have to recommend him, and he wanted to be on good terms with both. So unfortunately, that clouded his judgment, I'm sure. He elected to disband us in total, trying to use the very weak justification that we had run out of funding, which I knew for a fact was a lie, because I knew that we were funded throughout that fiscal year and through the following fiscal year, because I was part of the budget process. No other unit or department in the Criminal Justice Division was affected by this lack of funding, only the 6 of us. So I smelled a rat right away, and we found ourselves all assigned to various courthouses throughout the state. And ironically, I found myself assigned to the Furthest courthouse out in Litchfield. It would have been scenic if not for the fact that I was doing it 5 days a week during the middle of winter. 90 minutes was driving from North Haven to Litchfield. I found myself with almost nothing to do out there, and then I had a 90-minute drive back to contemplate my circumstances on the way home. The mistake they made was they gave me an ideal opportunity to work on preparing my federal lawsuit 5 days a week for 120 days. That gave me the foundation for my lawsuit, which was eventually filed in federal court.
From myself to yourself, thanks for joining me on this journey. And thank you, Pumpkin.